Welcome to another edition of I Am Thomas, and here I am today, kind of a fitting video I thought, with the Dodgers making the World Series for all you baseball fans. I thought I'd show you the grave of Charles Ebbets. He was a co-owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers, who would later go on to become known as the Los Angeles Dodgers. And the Brooklyn Dodgers, and there you see the emblem of the old Brooklyn Dodgers. They had many names prior to being called the Brooklyn Dodgers, many incarnations. We go back to early as 1883 in some form, of a baseball kind of league. They were known as the Brooklyn Grays. They were also known as the Brooklyn Atlantics, the Brooklyn Bridegrooms even, Brooklyn Super Bass, Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers. Many incarnations, many names. And there is Mr. Charles Ebbets in his later years with a nice tummy, dad bod. Look, I have it too. Well, let's get into the story of Mr. Charles Ebbets, one of baseball pioneers. So, Mr. Ebbets, if we kind of fast forward, jump into the story, born in the year of 1859, grew up in Clark Street in New York City, moved to Astoria. Fast forwarding, after his schooling ended, he worked at a publishing firm, and then he would begin work as an architect with the firm of William T. Baer. His work there as a draftsman and building designer would serve him well in the later years when he decided to build a baseball stadium. I remember, guys, you could scroll down to this video, I'll include a link. I did a video on Ebbets Field. You see where it was located. Now it's like I won't spoil it for you, but you'll be amazed. You'll see where it once no longer stands, obviously. But yeah, that, as an architect, helped him build Ebbets Field for his beloved Brooklyn Dodgers. That's an early picture of Mr. Ebbets. But Ebbets was not only a baseball person, but he was also a great bowler. He was a member of the Prospect Club, the Charlton Club, and the Commonwealth Council team. 1889, he played with the Stars of South Brooklyn and the Lincoln Council Bowlers. Following year, he joined the Prospects, elected their captain, and he had a bowling average of 170 in more than 50 years, more than 50 games, rather. So he was a great bowler. He was in a Brooklyn Eagle, written in the Brooklyn Eagle. By the way, this is how Ebbets Field would look like eventually. Truly, and if you kind of put two and two together, City Field, which is where the Mets play, kind of a rendition of old Ebbets Field, because the former owners of the Mets were big Brooklyn Dodger fans. The Mets is the team that replaced the Brooklyn Dodgers after the Brooklyn Dodgers kind of moved away. This is where a lot of the Brooklyn Dodger fans, they became Met fans. So, anyway, as just to jump back in, Ebbets, he was considered one of the greatest bowlers in Brooklyn. So he had, not only was he an architect, but he was a great bowler. Now, in the year of 1883, his brother Jack, Charles's brother, he had introduced him to gentlemen by the name of Joe Doyle and George Taylor, friends of who had recently formed the Brooklyn Baseball Association. Now, Ebbets got a job working for the team selling tickets, scorecards, and peanuts at their Washington Park Stadium, which was at 5th Avenue and 3rd Street. He printed the scorecards himself. In 1881, the Brooklyn Bridegrooms, as they were then known, moved to a larger field called Eastern Park, all over here, not too far away from where Mr. Ebbets is buried. Several years later, they had to move again, this time to an 18,000 seat Washington Park second at the original site. And on 1889, the first game was played at the new Washington Park. There you could see the city, the view of the city in the background, close to where Mr. Ebbets' his final resting spot. So, baseball was growing. It was going. It was popular. More fans by the year. Now, Mr. Ebbets, by 1890, 7 years, he had saved enough money to make an investment in the team. And he continued to buy stock whenever he could. That same year, the Bridegrooms won the pennant, and in the first year of the league. In January of 1889, Mr. Ebbets had, by that time, already owned 80% of the stock, the other 20% being held by the club's then president. He was just 38 years old. Talk about being successful, right? But then, the president of the Bridegrooms had died. Mr. Ebbets was the treasurer already at that point. And at that point, Mr. Ebbets was elected as the new president. Shortly thereafter, the Superbass at that time, they had won the National League pennant, their second in 9 years. They would win the pennant the following year. Now, Mr. Ebbets knew that Washington Park site would not do for the game of baseball what he had visioned. He knew that the space was not enough. It was a wooden structure and subject, therefore, to fire, and it would just require a lot of maintenance. It was also located in South Brooklyn, near several factories and a canal whose had a very unpleasant smells. Here is what is inside of Ebbets Field. Eventually, it just smelled, right? So he needed another place to go. Build a stadium. It focused on an area in Flatbush, which was named Pigtown, because it was a local dump that was kind of occupied principally by squatters. Now, a major part of this attraction was that 9 separate trolley car lines converged near the site of where he was looking to build. So now Mr. Ebbets had already learned that it was important to get the fans to the game. How are they going to get there? They needed a place to travel. He quietly began to purchase the individual lots in Pigtown over a 4-year period. By 1911, he had acquired 5.5 acres of land for the garden for a price of, get this, $100,000. 1912, he sold half of his holdings in the Superbass to raise the $750,000 needed to build a new stadium, and it will be a 25,000 seat arena, known to be at the intersection of Empire Boulevard and Bedford in Brooklyn. 55 Sullivan Place was the address. Ebbets Field was built. and the rest is history. One of the famous stadiums where you hear is Ebbets Field, even to this day. So, Ebbets was really a hands-on baseball owner. As we approach, here is the grave of Mr. Charles Ebbets. Very, doesn't bring much attention, does it? Very common, very plain. Many concepts did Mr. Charles Ebbets introduce into the game. First concept was Ladies' Day in 1899, in which women were admitted to the ballpark for a reduced fee. He also helped change the length of Major League Baseball schedule from 140 to 154 games in 1904, based on the distances required to visit each club in the league at that time. He also helped in the installation of separate batting and fielding practices for his Dodger team and the visiting team, along with separate dressing rooms with lockers and running water. Now remember, at that time, the visiting team came dressed from the hotel before arriving at the ballpark, often getting jeered or pelted by the home fans. Not a pleasant experience, I'm sure. He also came up with the idea of the rain check, which detached portion of the check could be used in the event of a rainout. He also came up with the idea for a players' draft, in which the team with the worst record gets the first picks in the draft. He proposed having all teams to put numbers on the players' sleeves or caps. He also came up with the 2-3-2 game pattern used in World Series, format that's still used today. Ebbets saw 2 pennants during his lifetime, 1916 and 1920, though he never seen a World Series title. The Brooklyn Dodgers now did not win a World Series until 1955. 5 years after the title and 3 years after the team had left Brooklyn. His stadium was demolished after the team left Brooklyn, and Ebbets Field's apartments now stand on that site. I again will put a link down in the video. When he died, his estate was valued at $1,115,257, most of it being in half ownership of the Brooklyn Dodgers Baseball Club and the Ebbets Field property. Wow. Pioneer, a great baseball owner, brought many, he put a stadium, remember, where it was easy to get to. Trolley systems. People were able to watch games now in person. Before, some of the prior locations of where these games were, like Washington Park, was not the easiest to get to. So he was a very much a visionary in the game of baseball, and by all accounts, a great baseball owner. Many teams, many players, many people, when the Brooklyn Dodgers had left, they moved. Some became Met fans. A new team that came in the early 60s, and others converted into being Los Angeles Dodger fans. Interesting now, as this video is being made, Dodgers-Yankees in the World Series.